Welcome to another episode of the Roots Podcast. I am your host, Sean Pitcher. Today's guest we have on is Linda Samuels. She is a consultant sports dietitian and the owner of Training Table Sports Nutrition. She also has experience consulting with Gatorade or GSSI, Gatorade Sports Science Institute, Northwestern University, Abbott Nutrition, and she is also the director of career advancement with SHPN. SHPN is the Sports and Human Performance Nutrition group that's a part of the Academy. If you haven't heard of them, we are having a symposium next week. So please go ahead and register and join us with all the amazing speakers that we have coming up. But Linda, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. This is such a cool thing that you're doing, and it's so interesting hearing what other sports dietitians are doing.
Absolutely. Trying to break down those silos so that way we can all be one unit and work together at the end of the day, which I think fits really well into our conversation today. But before we start that, can you tell the audience what is your roots? Who is Linda?
Well, I've been a registered dietitian. This is my 36th year. So for many of my colleagues, I've been a dietitian longer than they've been alive. So I've seen so many changes and so many cool things happening over the years. And I started in nutrition support and then took a right turn for 13 years with Abbott Laboratories in sales and marketing and health system management and all. And I didn't get into sports until I was 44 years old. And that was back in when they had the very first sports nutrition symposium at the USOTC. I think it was like 2008,
Wow.
before we even had a practice manual. And I went to it because I ran marathons and I was like, I need to know what I'm doing. And when I got there, I was in this room of the most amazing kick butt people I'd ever met. And I'm like, these are my people. And so
This is my tribe.
this is it. And even though I didn't know anything and I was 44, I thought, I'm all in. I'm going all in. So I was very lucky because I met Michelle Macedonio and Roberta Andy and Heather Mangieri during that symposium. And I did a little begging and offering my volunteer services. And so that's how I got my first mentors. And I mean, I could not have had the most wonderful experience if they had not helped guide me on this crazy pathway that we have as sports dietitians, and then picking up other mentors as I went along, as I added in these crazy sports like professional boxing, when Clint Wattenberg was at Cornell. So that goes back all these years. I think that was 2015. If I hadn't had these mentors, I don't know what I would have done, because we have learned so much in sports nutrition in these past 16 years. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, I would say from mentor standpoint, like again, I think anyone can say that along the way, in some way, shape, or form, even if it's not another dietitian, like there's probably somebody there, a strength coach, an athletic trainer, another
Yes.
coach. Even you might even learn from your own athletes at the end of the day. I think if you can come in with the
Yes.
mindset that you can learn something today from somebody, like you're going to get that much better going into the next job or opportunity that you have going forward.
Sean, that is just such a key point, what you just said about learning from our athletes. That is so true, because sometimes we're tempted to bring our calculations and all of our knowledge from the yellow book and everything, and they can teach us so much as to how to work with their particular sport. And I didn't start into boxing until I was in my 50s. And here's this old lady walking into this gym with all these, buff dudes who are boxing, and they're like, well, what can she teach me? And so I went in there really not knowing much at all, except uh, a little Twitter conversation with Stu Phillips on body composition change, because in those days we had exactly one research article on boxing. That was it.
That's not much
One.
to go off of.
Yeah. And so those were the years that, Twitter was kind. And I sent a message in desperation to Stu Phillips asking him about body composition change, because this, high ranking WBC boxer was asking me to help him make weight, and he had to lose literally 25 pounds in 6 weeks. And
Mm, it's
and
tough.
he was in the process of sparring. And so if I hadn't had Stu Phillips and his kind heart to talk, kind of walk me through protein dosing and that concept, and then run things past Clint Wantberg when he was working with the wrestlers at Cornell. This is pre-UFC. um, I would have failed miserably. But, Andrew Fanfaro, my boxer, I mean, I told him straight off, I don't know everything about this, so you're going to have to teach me some of this, and we'll figure this out together. And we had a three and a half year journey. He started ranked at 22 with the WBC, and he ended up ranked number two in the world for light heavyweight. And he fought at the World Championship in Montreal, and he lost that. But it was like the most amazing, super cool experience that a sports dietitian in our 50s could have ever dreamed of experiencing. So sorry for that. But going back to what you said, we learn from our athletes.
I always love when they get that question in an interview, like, what's the first thing that you're going to do when you get here? Like, how are you going to change things? And my response is, which there's a lot of people like, I'm going to do a lot of observation. And they're like, you're going to do a lot of observation. Like, they're ready for you to come and like, I want you to start changing things. No, I need to see how things are running. I need to have
Yes.
conversations with the athletes, with the coaches, what went right prior to me getting here, what needs to improve that you see are big yellow and red flags now. And yeah, like if you're going to go into a sport that you know nothing about, just ask lots of questions. More often than not, they probably love the sport so much that they're going to want to teach it to you anyways. And then that's just going to help
Absolutely.
you leaps and bounds because they know that you're invested, you're interested, you're spending the time being around in their environment, which any athlete's going to appreciate. And most athletes, when you do that and then you're not there, they're like, why aren't you here? Like, we want you to be here because you're making a difference. And it doesn't have to be, going in there full steam, 1,000 miles per hour from the jump. Most people
Yes.
don't like or enjoy that anyways. And like you said, most athletes don't want to be just like getting talked at and told what to do. You got to work kind of side by side with them nowadays.
Yeah, building trust is such an important component of that, sports dietitian athlete relationship. And, once they trust you, then they'll disclose more information. So you may start with some information, and, a few interactions down the road, you realize that you've got something else going on too. And so it really enhances, our work with them once we build that trust and they start disclosing a lot of information. And also, to your point about, you know, uh, um, you know, the whole community involved in a sport, and watching them. Uh, I did a lot of trading for, little tips and tricks for insider training on boxing. So, for example, I had one boxer who I adored who had no money to be spent on sports nutrition consultation, but I said, "Hey, I'll trade you and I'll do your sports nutrition consultation if if you and I go to a few, boxing matches together and you're in my ear and you're going to explain what's going on. And that's what we did. We worked out these arrangements so that, we both, got something out of it. And it was, really fun. And he did a lot of referrals for me later. And it was a wonderful experience, kind of like helping me to embed in that boxing community in Chicago.
And I think it only takes one. If you do good by one person, and it's a big world, but it's a small world at the same time. Like that word is going to flourish to everywhere else possible, because either one, they're going to see, like you said, my boxer went from 20 to number 2. Everyone's always going to have the question, well, how did they do that? And
Yeah.
like, what do I have to do to get to that point? So the next question is going to be asked, like, well, who's on your team and who should I talk to?
Yeah. Depending on the culture of the sport too, they may have some things that they do that are just like mind-boggling, and you wonder, how do they go, fight 12 rounds when they're spitting out the fluids, when they're at the corner instead of actually drinking it. And so, it took a little while to gain their trust, to kind of like change that culture of spitting out the fluids to drinking the fluids, and then taking them to the next step of, actually, fluid loading and, sodium loading, and all of the carb loading and all this stuff that was like contradictory to what the coaches of old had taught them. And also, learning the rules and regulations of different states. And that was a big deal because, I always wondered why people wanted to fight in Las Vegas. It's because they have really open rules on what you can drink in the corner. They can drink Gatorade. So when they check in, if it's closed Gatorade, and they can drink it. And that's how Floyd Mayweather won all of his fights, in part because he's, incredibly talented. But I would watch him and I would see him in the corner drinking grape Gatorade. And and I'm sure that's one of the reasons, because he could. Whereas in Illinois, you can't drink Gatorade in the corner. It's just closed water bottles when you check in. So, it's learning all these rules and regulations can inform how we can give them the edge on different ways of them performing.
And that's why I bring people on, because like I never had any clue about that. So like you taught me something new today. There's always these little nuances, those little details, stuff we might see a flicker of on TV when you're watching a certain sport, and you're like, oh, why are they doing that? And it's like, let me go ask a dietitian in this space, like so they can like bring some light to that to actually tell me what's going on. And
Yeah.
I think the other thing too is sports psych and mental coaches are probably a dietitian's best friend. I mean, I can't
Oh,
tell you how much I've learned from them that has
yes.
improved my motivational interviewing, how I ask questions, how I watch body language, how people are returning that verbiage of communication back to me. Definitely a game changer. If you were a dietitian out there and you have
Absolutely.
not partnered up with one of those professionals, like they can teach you a lot that's going to make you as a professional better in how you interact with people.
So much. That is such an excellent point. And collaborating when you see somebody in trouble, an athlete in trouble, collaborating with them and getting referral and getting them help. I mean, I tell you, since COVID, so much has changed, and I've done so many more referrals to sports psychologists since then. And so that's an excellent point, collaborating with them
Yeah.
and learning.
Yeah, so one of the big reasons we brought you on here is because of your passion with mentoring. So to kind of keep it simple, I know it's probably a broad question, but what does mentoring mean to you? Or as we look at our profession as dietitians, right? There's kind of probably two parts of it, right? How do young dietitians find a mentor? And then if you're a seasoned veteran dietitian, how do you then put yourself into a place where then now you can mentor and teach people skills that maybe, as we look into college, you're probably learning a lot of stuff from a book, but until you're obviously out getting in the thick of things with some other professionals, there may be stuff you're not going to learn until you're actually under somebody that has that knowledge.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, mentoring. I just, like I said, from the start, if I hadn't had those ladies, these incredibly smart, trailblazers, truly, you know, to be able to call up when I really needed their help, I don't know what I would have done. And, part of mentoring too, I always like to tell people, um, be prepared when you ask anything of your mentor, because what they're giving back to you is a true gift. And so you have to be very respectful and be prepared. So don't just say, I would never, say, call me up and just say, hey, Linda, I got a new boxer. Tell me what I should do. Don't do that. Make a plan, do your homework, do the research, figure out like your first draft of your plan of action, and then present things to a mentor so that they can help guide you and say, that's awesome, that's a great baseline. Maybe have you thought of this, or thought of this, and how about trying this resource or this resource? And so they're adding on layers of insight and perspective, like you said, that aren't in the books, and they've learned by just being boots on the field. So in that respect, please utilize your mentors in a respectful manner. But as you look at mentoring, I always like to go back to the guidelines that are guardrails, the revised sports nutrition SOPP document, the standards of practice, standards of professional performance document, really outlines for us. And I'm going with this because they have divided sports dietitians into 3 different levels, kind of to show us kind of where we should be at different parts of our career, because we look at mentoring and our mentoring needs very differently. So the first level, they call it competent, and that's you are a new RD and you're like so stoked to be a sports dietitian, and you're ready to start studying for the CSSD and start garnering more and more experiential hours, so you can clock in those hours that you need to sit for the CSSD. Those newer sports dietitians are oftentimes looking for direction. They have all this information coming at them, and they're like, I don't know what I want to do quite yet. I know I want to be a sports RD, but I don't know what I want to do. And I oftentimes like to talk to them about what are your lifestyle goals first, because
You want to
if
have a
you
family, or do you got a little bit of time where you can work a little bit of extra hours and be okay with that?
exactly, because a lot of times you might be dipping a toe in and starting a private practice, but those hours are generally after people get out of their work, so it's a lot of night hours and a lot of weekend hours. So you have to decide what kind of you know boundaries
Model
you
or
would
like
put up with
schedule
that.
routine you want to like put out for yourself? Like what is my non-negotiable time that I need to spend with family? And what is my time over here that like I'm gonna dedicate to like having to work or would like to work? And then it's like, where does that even out so I don't take away from one or the other?
Yeah, and it's tough, isn't it? Because, especially if you have a young family. I have friends that have 4 kids, and, it's not easy, but they figured it out, and they are wonderful mentors, by the way. But there is a way to do it, but you have to, be you know, put up those borders and what, or boundaries, I should say, on how you want to spend your time. But a lot of times it is, what am I going to start first with? And, also it's like, if you like a sport, specialize in it. I started in my first 10 years, all I took was Ironman triathletes because there was this huge need for it. Nobody was doing it back then. It's super complex, and it's really scary because they're pretty much taking their chances with their lives out there. It's like pretty serious, but nobody was doing it. So I got a lot of hours, earned a lot of money because they have money. So anybody who wants a huge community of work, go for Ironman because they're out there and you will always be busy. So like finding your specialty or your passion is, and learning how to study is like that first competent. And then the second stage is called proficient. And that's when you've passed your CSSD and you're, working with more complex patients or clients. And you might, get a consultant position, at the collegiate level, or working with professional sport teams, or, your stuff. But that kind of area is, you might be going into more management positions, and so that needs a little mentoring, or you might be expanding to more sports that you're ready to take on, or taking on complex athletes, like athletes with eating disorders. That takes a lot more training to be able to manage those clients. Does that resonate with you? Because
Does
Sean,
that
you're
kind of,
taking off.
so I'd say that kind of the initial stage, is that kind of like the first 1 to 2 years? Because you obviously need a
Yeah.
couple of years to get your CSSD, and then that next stage maybe is like 3 to 6 year mark is kind of
Yeah.
what I'm thinking about from a timeline perspective.
Yes, I think that's fair to say. Some people jump it and get these great opportunities, which is great. But they might need a little bit more mentoring because they just haven't had the layers of experience that only time and working with multiple clients helps you with. But that's kind of that proficient stage. And then the third level is called expert stage. And, that's when you're doing some really complex stuff. And, you might be working with corporations who need your input for marketing new products, things like that, more professional teams, and more management positions. And the mentoring that I really see that is necessary here in this section is how to manage burnout. Because at
It's
this
real.
stage, it tends to be, you have so much responsibility and you're dealing with a lot of different, people and trying to mentor them up. Um, sometimes we can say yes too often, and we find ourselves in total burnout. And man, I tell you, when I went through that, it rocked my world. And so that's kind of one of my passion points too, that if people are feeling just burned out and just need somebody to talk to just like move through that, call me up because I know what it's like, and it's really hard. But sometimes it's the process of letting go of things and learning how to pass the baton to other people who would be fabulous at doing different roles and different jobs and cool opportunities, and just saying no, but here's a great person that can take this opportunity.
I think talking about mentors, Melinda Valiant, who we both know, when I was at Ole Miss, probably one of the things that sticks to me to this day is don't be a yes man. Know
Yeah.
your worth. there's going to be things that if you're not ready to do, just be honest and upfront, like, I'm not ready to do this, or I don't know how to do
Yes.
this, or I need to garner this experience so that I can be able to do this. Because I think a lot of dietitians also get into situations, where you apply for some of these jobs, like, we don't have enough experience. Well, I'm never going to get enough experience, or I'm never going to be in a position where I can take on some of these higher roles unless people give me more responsibilities or teach me how to handle some of these different responsibilities that I have to learn.
Yes.
Because I think you could probably attest to this. There's a lot of times where I had to learn this from a mentor, from a person, because there is no school that was going to teach me any of this stuff. Like, it's just
Exactly.
people's experience over time, what's gone well, what hasn't gone well, and then essentially how am I going to formulate my own philosophy that's going to work for me in whatever setting and environment that I'm going to get put in.
I love that because, it used to be like that. We got 300 research articles on sports nutrition a year, and now we get over 3,000. And, we are so subspecialized these days, and the intricacies and the minutia that we need to know to gain respect from coaches and other, sports med staff. We have to know our stuff. And so taking that time to really get every single layer, and to your point, going back to your observational skills, that is super important because we can learn from so many people.
I always say you can learn from the janitor. It doesn't really matter. Like, someone
Yeah.
in that building has knowledge that they're smarter than you in something, and even adding that skill to what you do. Like,
Yeah.
the last job I was at before the job I was currently at was heavily on social media. I didn't know as well about social media. Like, I didn't know that basically social media, in this case, becoming a currency, and like
Oh
that's what
my
kept our
gosh.
lights on in the building. But you know, I ask a lot of questions. I'm curious. Like, tell me more about this. How does this work? How does that fit into what I do? How does what I do fit into what you do? So that we can essentially help each other. Because at the end of the day, if I can help the business or I can help the owner, whoever it is, that's going to position me in a lot better situation long term when I can show my rate of return to them, and then vice versa.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, just the thought of all the social media stuff that everybody has been doing. I'm so amazed at the sports dietitians out there and the content that they're putting out. It's just like extraordinary. And I still put pictures of my dog out. That's about all I do that I have energy to do. But I'm much more of a let's talk on Zoom person than like putting it out there. But yeah, that's cool how you take every learning opportunity. And I mean, that's necessary these days.
What do you find are maybe some key traits in dietitians that you see that, you mentioned like jumping positions, or transitioning faster kind of through that pendulum, when it comes to maybe they don't have a lot of experience, but they seem to be just transitioning through these positions pretty well. Like, what are some key traits you see that dietitians at a young early age, if you listen and ask these questions or have these things, you may be able to accelerate your career a little bit quicker.
I will tell you the secret. And
You heard it here, the
and
secret.
it's no longer a secret. Yeah. It's all about volunteering for different organizations. I'm telling you, because it does take a lot of time and effort to, you know, coordinate programs and, develop new things and innovate and things like that. But the people that you interact with, and whether it's SHPN or CPSDA or ACSM or NATA, any of these organizations that you can volunteer with, and they see that your stuff, um they're the ones that will be like, hey, when they hear a job coming up, they'll be like, hey, Sean Pitcher is like, he rocks. He's awesome. He's on it. You get the best recommendations from, people that you found in organizations. I tell you, I have gotten more, you know, opportunities because I have volunteered year after year after year, in some way, shape, or form.
Or even like you mentioned earlier, like even if you have a actual detailed plan approach when you're reaching out to these high level professionals, right? Coming with questions, understanding what your needs are and what you're trying to get out of the mentor you're trying to reach out to.
Yes.
When you can come with that plan and now be able to say like, hey, can I have 15, 30 minutes of your time, answer two or three questions that now you're able to obtain that information, knowledge, or tools, like, and they see the initiative. I mean, I can't tell you probably how many times I've heard from dietitians like me just taking the initiative or what I did when I reached out to the individual made such an initial impression that they're
Yeah.
like, yeah, hey, this person looking for this position. I see they've talked to you before. What do you know about them? And even sometimes like you just having that 30-minute conversation, the person was so impressed. Yeah, absolutely. Like think they're a great candidate. You should definitely go with them or at least give them a chance to have an interview.
Yeah, the 15 minutes turns into 30 to an hour to four, interactions, 10 interactions. I mean, I look at some of the relationships that I've gained that's maybe started as mentors, and they've become my, some of my best friends that, not only help with jobs and advice and, I've had a really bad days, but these are people that I definitely recommended for, things in the future because I've seen long term that they bring it time after time after time. So that's one of the biggest things that I would advise people to do is volunteer and, spend time with their their organization of choice.
And I always try to relate a lot of things over to like investment. I mean, I do this with the tactical, community I work with right now, or with the athletes. Like, yeah, you see it says volunteer, and I understand everyone definitely wants to make something or make some money because again, things are very challenging from an economic standpoint. But if you look
Yes.
at volunteer investment, let's say you in this case scenario, 30, 35 plus years of experience, right? If you volunteer, let's say, I don't know, 10 hours of your year with, let's say you, right? And think about you as a mentor or how much you may could possibly charge as a consulting fee as a mentor, right? That's equated to a certain amount of money.
Oh,
Or
yeah.
I'll tell my athletes like, hey, you know how much I would charge for meeting with somebody one-on-one? And then I say, you get to meet with me unlimited times because I work here. And
Yeah, they're so lucky.
let's times 100 times, I don't know, $150 an hour. So
Yeah.
you're saving that money because we have practitioners here that are here to help you. So now you're making an
Yeah.
investment, and then you do that with strength, you do that with mental, you do that with nutrition, you do that with athletic training, all the different people that are here, right?
So
That's hundreds of
valuable.
thousands of dollars, maybe even millions of dollars over your lifetime that you're now saving because you're utilizing the resources that you have. So if
Yeah.
you can take some of these volunteer opportunities, if you do have the opportunity to be able to do that, the amount of money you're not having to spend later on because you're now investing on the front end in these people that have more knowledge than you that can teach you these
Yeah.
things is possibly an unlimited number on
Yeah.
the value that's bringing back to you for your own business or what you want to do going forward.
And I tell you, it's really interesting how it comes full circle too, because I might be a mentor in certain areas that that are my specialty, sports. But then if I get, in fact, I got a refer an athlete reaching out to me, and dance is not my specialty, so I put it out there and connected with somebody who works with ballet dancers, and so you start to build this network. And so it's not only going for assistance with mentoring, but for cross referrals and collaborating and working together for the for the athletes benefit. We're a service and support career. That's what we do. We serve by supporting athletes. And so if we can help each other do that, then that's awesome.
Absolutely. Linda, really appreciate your time coming on. I think we might have to do a part two here soon because I think there's much more we can dive into when it comes to a seasoned dietitian being a mentor. I know you also had something called nutrition focused exams that you're really interested in too. I know you do a lot with hydration. So stay tuned. Definitely may do a part two here. There's a lot more we could dig into, but definitely appreciate the time that you did allow us to have. All of her information, contact information will be in the show notes. So if you want to connect with Linda or want to utilize her services, that'll be there. Same with mine as well. Also, all of our other 65 plus podcast episodes that we have out on the Roots podcast are going to be on there too. But Linda, thank you very much.
Thanks, Sean. Take care, everyone.